To start, I will address the framework aspect of today's round. I agree with my opponent's framework of structural violence because prisons cause an inordinate amount of structural violence and therefore should be abolished. Next, I will address my opponent's counterplay. My opponent pretends to be limiting structural violence by abolishing for-profit prisons, but really he's only changing the place where it occurs. There are currently about 2 million people in for-profit prisons, or approximately 28.5% of all inmates in the United States. Abolishing for-profit prisons only seem to move the problem of overcrowding, which the GAO has already attested to. Next, he says that federal prisons are much safer. That might be true compared to for-profit prisons, but that doesn't make them safe. For every 500 criminals in the federal prison system, there are 12 counts of serious assault per month. Those assaults were only the ones that resulted in serious physical injury. So federal prisons might be more safe than their for-profit brethren, but they are not a system that exudes morality and justice, which we deserve in society. Next, he says that currently federal prisons do a much better job providing human rights and medical coverage for their inmates. The problem is, to abolish the for-profit system without even touching the federal prison system and their funding will lead to an extreme loss in the availability of rehabilitation programs and medical coverage. Now that I said that, he's going to say that we can just give them more money, but that's not part of his counterplan, and you can't let him add to that argument. So what he's saying is that you can take away the 2 million inmates from for-profit prisons, force them into federal prisons, and there won't be any change. But the problem is that doesn't make any sense. When you add 2 million people to an already overcrowded system, there's going to be a severe loss in the availability of rehabilitation and medical coverage benefits. Currently, the rehabilitation efforts that they do provide do not even come close to accomplishing the task they attempt. According to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, 67.5% of all criminals are back in prison within 3 years. That is a cycle we must break. Now I'm going to move on to defend my own case. My opponent attempts to tell us that I'm advocating for anarchy, assuming that I will just allow criminals to just walk around. No, instead I will have them detained, not in a prison, but in facilities that are better suited to fix their particular needs. Just because prisons no longer exist doesn't mean there won't be consequences for actions taken in society. He said against my prisons don't work argument by saying, look at how the assaults are lower in federal prisons. That does not make them acceptable or accomplishing their task. He missed how the prison system increases recidivism, as I've already proven, and that in itself shows how prisons don't work. He then moves on to lump all criminals into one box. He labels them as too lazy or too stupid to get a job. That offends me, especially since crime is not always the choice of the perpetrator. When the decision is between steal or starve, we can't expect them to make a legal decision. We therefore should use a criminal justice system that will help them climb out of that cycle rather than increase the likelihood that they will stay in it. Against my argument that prisons cost too much, he says that that's only for-profit prisons. He's asserting that federal prisons that house more than 5 million inmates don't cost anything, and that the cost won't come up with an increase of 2 million inmates. Judge, you're going to drop that because it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. He then tries to tell you that crime is going to happen regardless, but we shouldn't be making it easier. The prison system makes it easier to become a repeat offender because they make it almost impossible to rejoin society once your debt has been repaid. Serial killers, that's next, and I'm glad he brought this up because they belong in mental asylums. But in the current system, they are put in prisons that cannot provide for their special needs. Judge, when you look at this round, you must see that the alternatives are the only way to create a positive impact on society by actually preparing the inmates to get back into society and provide a benefit. My opponent forgot to refute in his speech how the legal system punishes something that doctors have categorized as a disease and is uncontrollable. So with this short-sightedness, you have to look at the failing prison system and vote with the proposition to create a better world where we fix crime and not just punish criminals. Thank you.